One of the advantages of OCT angiography is that it is a non-invasive method. So we no longer have counterindications associated with pregnancy, cardiac or renal problems. It isn't a method that has systemic effects either. In other words, it doesn't cause allergies or anything like that. Thanks to the hemoglobin reflex, it simulates a contrast element. Since we are not using a contrast method, such as fluorescein, it allows us to perform this study on a more repeated basis in order to have a good follow-up of the patient. We don't have any complications in the event of a leakage either. In this case, this is not an obstacle or a problem for digital OCT angiography. Another great advantage we have by doing the angiography with OCT is that it allows us to see different depths of the tissue, so we can analyze the vessels much more extensively. And thanks to the fact that it has tracking technology, it will allow us to monitor any slight movement of the patient. The equipment will compensate for that. We also have the possibility of having noise cancelling thanks to an algorithm, maybe a blink or something. The device will detect it and filter it out. And together with all these possibilities, we can have images of very high resolution and obtain information that was not possible before. So to do a screening, to have a follow-up that is not invasive and that we can repeat as many times as necessary, we have this technology and this module that we can activate at any time to be able to do more and more precise tests. Now we are going to make an angiography measurement. We are going to switch to the Measure tab. We are going to choose, in this case, both macula or disc have angiography options. In this case, in macular angio, we have a series of options, either a horizontal or vertical scan. The scan range, that is how much surface we want to scan, we have from 3 mm to 9 mm. The number of A scan points, the number of B scan lines, the overlapping, which in this case is 5, and the panorama or single options. This will allow us to modify the fixation light and then make a panoramic map of the angiography. In this case, we are going to make it a single measurement, and first we are going to position the patient. It is very important that the patient is comfortable, with their chin well supported and firmly positioned, and that the distance with the forehead is correct. This way the patient will be able to collaborate much more easily and will not feel uncomfortable during the study. Once we have made sure that the patient is well positioned and comfortable, we will first focus on the video image we have in the OCT. We will see the white dots and we will try to bring them to the same size as the blue dots. At this point, the equipment will automatically do the scanning and we have the video at the bottom to see where we are. We can also tell the patient at this point they will see a green light, and if they have difficulty seeing it, we can modify its brightness. This will be helpful for patients who may have a slightly denser cataract or who have some other vision impairment. If the patient cannot see the green fixation light, we can always resort to the fixed option. We also have the possibility of increasing the infrared illumination. This way we will be able to see the retina more clearly on the upper left. Once we are positioned and we have a good image, we can press Optimize, where the equipment will find the best noise to signal ratio and we will be able to see the macula. At this moment we can see we have a signal quality of 9 out of 10. We are well positioned at the bottom in the camera. That green box that we see in the fundus is the disc tracking. In this case, it is finding it properly. This way it will take a preliminary image so that the algorithm can assemble the final image. Once we are ready, we are going to tell the patient to keep the eye open and wait until we finish the study. At this moment, in the upper right corner, we will see the number of frames or cuts over the total. And in the video, we will see that the red horizontal bar is doing all the tracking in this case. If at any moment the patient moves beyond the auto tracking, we can position the instrument again so that the green box appears again, which will allow us to do the tracking again and continue with the measurement. Very good. We are now finishing the study. The patient can rest, and we have the same option as before. We can press OK to confirm and continue with another study, the retry option, In case the patient moved too much, or if the auto-tracking hasn't been enough, we can quickly repeat the study, or in this case, we select Analyze. Once we finish taking the angiography, we can proceed to make its analysis. On the screen, we have several options. First, we have single, that is going to show only one eye. We have the option to see both eyes, left and right eye simultaneously, where we can choose if we have a previous study in date. And in case we have the history of this patient in the equipment, we can make the comparison, the progression analysis, and also the option to make panorama in case we have taken a panorama type capture. In this case, in the single option, we are currently viewing the left eye. We are going to have the different images of the different depths. This is a great advantage of OCT angiography because thanks to its laser technology, we can analyze different depths. We are no longer limited to a two-dimensional image only, but we can interact with the tissue in a different way. We can select a series of options either from the choroids, from the superior layer, the deepest layer, and also the yellow line is the cut line. And below we have the OCT image. We also have the option to choose higher resolution images on the right, where we can also make an analysis of the foveal avascular zone with an automatic algorithm. An advantage of having an automatic algorithm is that we don't depend on the subjective interpretation of an operator. The algorithm can perform analyses in a fast, consistent, and accurate way, which will allow us to make a comparison or a progression of a patient using the same criteria, which is the algorithm offered by Huvitz for its angiography. This way we can also select different options, for example, the thickness map between the pigment epithelium and the limiting membrane, between the plexiform and the limiting membrane, or the depth-coded map, where we can also choose the different layers below. We can choose between the nerve fiber layer, between the inner plexiform and the outer plexiform. Also here we can choose Bruch's membrane in the pigment epithelium and see the difference to obtain all the necessary information. And once we have chosen how we want to display the information on our report, we can click on Report. And again, here we can print it on a physical printer or print it in PDF, either on a digital storage like USB or on a network address. It is also important to remember that we can export all of this information to the Huvitz Remote Access Platform, which will not only allow us to see the reports, but also to generate new reports and view the image in high resolution, just as we are doing right now, only that we can do it even with the equipment turned off. I believe that these modules add value, they add possibilities of measurement confirmation, and in the case of angiography, the mere fact that it is a non-invasive method really allows us to better follow up retinopathies or other types of pathologies that are linked to the retina in particular.